So we've got four completely separate torts. And although the scenarios are set up as if the person is looking at all four, they wouldn't have to. They could just do one if there was one that clearly had a chance of winning. But sometimes you kind of throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. But just to be clear, these are separate torts. So we've got private facts tort, publishing intimate information that is not newsworthy without consent. Defenses are, it's actually not that private. It is newsworthy. In fact, even better than newsworthy is if you can argue it's actually in the public interest for people to know. There was consent. And then these two airtight defenses. It happened in a public place, or it's public record. In other words, the government's already published it, so you can't get in trouble for it. Now, if we're going to go back to our very first case of this class, Dorothy Barber v. Time, we could now do a private facts tort analysis. Again, that case was actually part of what shaped the private facts tort. So we could say Dorothy Barber's mysterious illness was published in Time magazine, along with her name and picture, which reporters obtained by entering her hospital room. She explicitly told the reporters that she didn't want to be in the magazine, and one reporter actually took her picture without permission while she was objecting. All right, so you're setting it up there, and then let's do the analysis. Barber can easily show that her intimate information, medical information is definitely intimate, was published without her consent. So she has a strong case for publication of private facts. The fact that it was published elsewhere doesn't help Time. Only information from government-published public records are fair game. Remember, Time argued that it was innocent because that story had already been published somewhere else. Of course, not with the same circulation Time had. But that public records defense only refers to public records that the government has released. So that's what it would look like in scenario format. We've got the private facts tort, publishing intimate information that isn't newsworthy without consent. False light, public portrayal of someone in a distorted or fictionalized way, not necessarily harming reputation. So it's often thrown in there with a libel case, just in case they can't prove defamation. When you do a scenario, make sure to actually address whether it's distortion or fictionalization. Defenses for false light, truth, and the fact that plaintiffs have to prove reckless disregard for the truth, which, as you remember from libel, is virtually impossible. Intrusion, or paparazzi tort, physical or technological invasion of privacy. So when you think intrusion, you want to think usually paparazzi. But the phrase that's important for you to remember when you're addressing it in a scenario is actually reasonable expectation of privacy. That's what I need to see you actually work with if you're trying to determine whether someone's guilty of intrusion. The only defense for intrusion is that there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. It's actually crazy for that person to think that they were having a private moment. Now, it's common for students to get intrusion and private facts a little bit mixed up because both of them, in a way, have a defense of a public place. If you do something really intimate in a public place, it might be intimate, but you're not going to be able to sue for private facts because you made it public by being out there in public. And then intrusion, obviously you have no reasonable expectation of privacy if you're in public. But that's why it's really important to actually use the phrases that go with each one of these torts. So the question for intrusion is there or is there not a reasonable expectation of privacy? So keep focused on that. Make sure you include that in your scenario. Misappropriation, far and away the most heavily litigated of the four torts today. The other three torts are, as far as I'm concerned, almost dead. This one is very much alive, sued for on a daily basis. The heart of misappropriation is that there was a commercial use, a use of someone's likeness for the purposes of making money. So misappropriation, the commercial use of someone's likeness without consent, defenses for that, non-commercial use, news, commentary, education. Non-commercial use, by the way, can also be just I didn't make any money off of it. So that can also be an argument for non-commercial use. Incidental use, the person's just a generic face in a crowd, or they did give you consent. But when it comes to misappropriation, it has to be more than implicit consent. With misappropriation, the person actually has to explicitly consent to, and preferably in writing, the commercial use of their likeness, which is why it's good to get model consent forms. If you're doing PR and advertising, this is going to be kind of a no-brainer. You should always be doing this if you're taking pictures of people that you might use in promotional material. And people are happy to do it. They want to be famous. So what you want to do in privacy scenarios is use the terminology that comes out of each tort. There's a very specific phrase or number of elements that come from each one of these privacy torts, and you want to address those and apply those specifically to your scenario. And if there are any defenses that might work, address those as well. All right, that's it. Go forth.